I think it's so funny sometimes when people just think I wound up in London to study at the Royal College of Art, but often when people are asking me questions, I have to start from the very beginning. It's so hard to just skip to London or skip to Spain. Like, I've been painting my entire life. Story time. I've been painting my entire life. I've been drawing my entire life. Um, I believe my mom really held space for that, purchasing me canvases and sketchbooks and notebooks. I genuinely never stopped. I do feel like I thought about it less. Um, when I was younger, it just was like out of habit. I used to draw Christmas cards. I painted a version of Jesus for church one time. I would have my paintings up in the house, and that was my thing. When I got to college the first time, only my friends knew I painted. So people would come over sometimes and we'd have like a paint evening and we'd all be painting on canvas or paper. And I would have my paintings up in my room. So only just like the people that I knew that I painted. And after studying in Monterey Bay, I moved to Long Beach. And in Long Beach, I was living. And Shelly Bruce, shout out to Shelly Bruce. But when she was in school, my mom collected a piece from her and she commissioned a painting. It was a family portrait and it was this huge painting. And I believe this was her first commission painting. And we had it in our living room for years, just this huge painting. And so when I moved to Long Beach, Shelly messaged me and she's like, "Hey, we have an open mic night. Do you still paint? Would you like to live paint?" Now, up until that point, only just like my intimate family friends knew that I painted. And I was like, "Well, what's live painting?" She goes, "Well, it's when you're painting while the event is happening. So spoken word, poetry, what have you." I was so nervous. I didn't have an easel. I think I just brought the canvas, or maybe she had the materials. I can't quite remember, but I know that I only had 10% of what I needed in order to live paint. So I live painted the open mic and I was so nervous because I was trying to figure out, well, what do I paint, right? Like, what do I make that the crowd would like? Because up until this point, I just painted privately. And I remember the painting, it was like two people making out, I feel, or they were like holding each other, was definitely not my favorite painting ever. Um, I was sweating. I was so nervous, but people were like, "Oh, this is so cool." I was so nervous, and I did it again and again and again, and I kept doing it. So all throughout Long Beach, all throughout LA, um, the, me live painting is what allowed me to build up my portfolio. I was live painting so much, I'd live paint at the Sugar Shack in LA. I painted so many places. I began curating events where I would invite other artists to exhibit their work. We'd have these showcases. I wouldn't even call them exhibitions at this point. These were showcases, right? You have the artwork, and then I would be invited out. You have the artwork, you have people rapping, doing their spoken word. It was basically how artists could come together, no matter the medium, and commune with one another as well as the community. Um, and I did this for a long time. And at some point, I became a little bit overwhelmed because I was doing all of this for free. And I believe, as an artist, when it's time to graduate. Like you have to graduate yourself. Someone's not going to walk up to you and say, "Do this or change this," or "This is a new habit you need to introduce." No one's going to tell you what you need to do. You, as an artist, recognize that if you are wanting to become stronger, change your environment, strengthen yourself as an artist, to be able to articulate your work, you have to graduate yourself. So I was loving the community events, but I remember I was at one in Long Beach and people were performing, but people kept knocking over the painting or touching the painting. And then I remember at some point, like the lights were off. And that's when I knew that I needed to take my paintings and put them in a different environment so people can actually look at them. So people could understand that there's an etiquette when purveying artwork or wanting to, yeah, purvey artwork. I knew I didn't want to be in spaces where the lights would be turned off and people were touching my paintings, unless the intention was to have the work experience with the lights off, or to be touched. But I wasn't making sensory work. Okay. The visual only. I'm not like, don't touch my work. Um, so I took a long break. I didn't paint for 7 months because I was trying to figure out what to do next. Mind you, this is all between the span of 2016. Yeah, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. So for 4 years. And then I went to an art show in Inglewood. I was living in Inglewood at the time. And I met my sister friend Lenise Howard. Now, Lenise, she's gonna get a shout out to the end of time. Okay. She was exhibiting work, some pieces. It was a group show, and we sat down and we talked. We introduced ourselves and we talked literally until it was time for people to go. They were like, okay, the show's ending on the private view. We talked the whole evening, and she was just sharing with me her experience of art school. She was sharing just so generously so much information with me, and up until that point I had not sat down with someone who generously shared information with me that aligned with where I wanted to go. Okay, many people didn't understand where I wanted to go, that because I had been outside for so long, live painting and showcasing at different community events. For many people, I think that they thought that that's where I just wanted to be all the time. And granted, I enjoyed this, but I also understood that I wanted my work to be viewed in a different way. I also wanted to be versed on other things, but people say Google is free, YouTube is free, but sometimes you just do not know what to search. It's so difficult to kind of sometimes figure out just what to search. For 7 months, 7 months, I did not paint. I didn't even know what to Google in between that time. Um, so when I met Lenise, I was like, she's like, I go to Otis College of Art and Design. You should go to art school. And I was like, no, they're gonna whitewash my work. And she's like, no, you're gonna learn the skills. You're gonna figure out all these like cheat codes. They're gonna teach you how to use certain, excuse me, they're gonna teach you how to use these items, these materials. You're gonna acquire new skills. You're gonna be around um different people, thinkers and tinkers, right? Um, I applied to SMC. I feel like it was that weekend and went. I kind of skipped a chapter. During those 7 months, though, I didn't paint anything. I had told myself that I wanted to exhibit work for a month or long. So up until that point, most of the time when I was showcasing my work, it was just for the evening. So I was either always on the bus or catching an Uber or catching a ride, installing my work, and then I'd have to bring it home. Charge it to the game. I love that. I love that that's a part of the game. But after a while, that can get so exhausting. Like 4 years of that, back and forth with every blue moon, somebody acquiring a work, like hauling your work back home all the time was so exhausting. Um, was it while I was in SMC or before? I can't remember, but there was a moment, it was 7 months. I started sending out proposals like emails. Peace, my name is Sunny Mullen. I'm interested in showcasing my work here. I noticed that you had artwork. How can I, be a part? How can I be a part of this? Um, a lot of people were very open. They were so open, and I'm so grateful that I was able to exhibit my work for 7 months straight. And because my commitment was I wanted my paintings to be on view for 30 days or more. That's what it was. And I did that. I got my photographs. Oh, okay, it was before SMC. I got my photographs, and then for a while I didn't think I had a portfolio. And when I took a deep breath, I realized that me live painting throughout the city for those 4 years, those 7 months where I exhibited, mind you, these were solo shows. Yeah, I was solo doloing it. Um, just like in the area, in LA, in Long Beach, in Lamar Park, at Post and Beam. Um, and I love that for me because I really I set the tone. I was planting all of these seeds. It's very important to remember sometimes it's not going to sprout. right then and there. But if you're planting the seeds, something's going to bloom, right? When I met Lenice, that was a part of the blooming. When I went to SMC, I applied to SMC and I went straight in. And I took free courses. I had never taken like a figure drawing class or anything like that, or when they put the items up and you paint them. I had never done anything like that. I took sculpture, um, and I had excellent teachers. Two standouts for me were Chris Badger, who told me to remain remarkable because I told him my plan. I was struggling so hard in still life. And I was struggling because I was trying to make it perfect, right? Sometimes when you walk in these classrooms, you see everybody's still lives and you're comparing like your visual language to theirs when really the idea is to capture what it is that you see, but in your own language. You have your own signature, okay? Um, and let me find her name. I don't want to say it wrong, but I believe her name is, let's see. Christopher Badger told me to remain remarkable, and I have just held that with me. Where's her Instagram? I'm gonna be upset if I don't remember because I don't want to say the wrong name. She was an excellent teacher. She was my sculpture teacher, and she just was very insightful. And this was like right before the pandemic, and I remember she's like, "Okay, we all have to go home." We never went back. I took the remainder of my courses via Zoom, and so many people were dropping out. They're like, "Oh, it's a pandemic, we'll just come back." But the pandemic lasted a hot while. I remained in school. My plan was to go to SMC, which I did. I completed all of my courses. I at the time I was living in Inglewood, so between my room and the living room, I kind of hogged the living room, no cap, hogged the living room. Um, I was 100% committed to learning everything. I was super curious. I tried everything. And yeah, I put all my eggs in one basket and used my prerequisites at SMC along with the paintings that I had made over the past 5, 6, 7 years into my portfolio. And I applied to Otis College of Art and Design, and I got in. I got in. And something that did help me though is I was actively emailing counselors. I also went up there so they could review my portfolio and they helped me organize it. When I began, it was during the pandemic, but I say all this to say, don't be afraid of planting seeds. Just understand that everything's not going to bloom tomorrow. And sometimes you're on a journey and you have a vision for yourself, maybe that is you can only see this far in advance, but sometimes that journey is preparing you for your next journey, right? I went to Otis College of Art and Design. At the time, I knew during the pandemic, I had kind of played around with the idea of studying abroad, but I hadn't done a whole bunch of research. On my list of places to study definitely were Germany, definitely was London. Those were two places that I was kind of drawn to, but I didn't do a significant amount of research because I was just so committed to being an undergrad at the time. Um, and I had an amazing time. I mean, I had an amazing time when it was on Zoom. I didn't really experience Zoom fatigue. Maybe during critiques, you can get Zoom fatigue. Um, but yeah, that was a brilliant time. And then when the campus opened back up and I went back to campus, I was around so many brilliant minds. I mean, there was a lot of tension though, too. And I think for me, it took me graduating from Otis to recognize, my headspace when I went into school was like super aggressive. It was aggressive in the sense of I was 100% curious. I was 100% down to do the thing. Like I was so open to experiment, to play, to ask questions, shaking hands. I was incredibly adamant, but I also recognized that I was older. I went into school a little older. So sometimes my peers and I found myself there was just a lot of tension for me sometimes because I felt like I was like pulling teeth. I felt like I was only engaging, with like not as many people as I would like to critically. But the people that I did connect with, we engaged very critically, and we always had our private conversations, public conversations. And I was in there. I was in there like swimwear. I put together my portfolio for grad school. And you want to know what's interesting? Applying to grad school was crazy because I knew I wanted to go, but my professors kept saying, like, oh, take a year, take a year. I don't think that they realized that I mean, maybe till later, that I was older. I was not like 19, 20, 21. I didn't feel or have any uncertainty. I was not experiencing any doubt about what to do next. I knew for a fact, no, I'm gonna go to school. I wasn't in school for like 3 or 4 years. The whole time I was live painting throughout the city, I was not in school. So by the time I got in school, in my brain, I didn't feel like, oh, I need a break. I was not tired. I wasn't tired and I wasn't unsure. Like I knew. Yeah. I applied to Yale. I applied to Yale really to get acclimated with applying to grad school. It would have been beautiful to get in, but I mostly applied for the sake of the experience of applying, organizing and writing. And I also held a meeting with a couple counselors at SAIC, School of Art Institute of Chicago, because I just had questions about grad school in general, what their program offered. Yale also had a virtual like open house where students talked about their experience. They gave us like a virtual tour and we were able to ask questions, which I really love. I hope schools are still doing that because it was very intimate. It wasn't like 40 people in the chat. I feel like it was probably like 15 to 20 of us. I did not get in. Okay. When I got that letter, was I sad about it? No, because I understood that I had applied for the sake of the experience of applying. The next day, okay, at the time I was working at Gavlag downtown. The next day, I was hopping out the car and I got a call. And it's crazy that I even answered it, but it was +44. Now, I had requested details from the Royal College of Art, but I didn't, what's the word? I didn't explore it beyond that. I was just kind of like, this would be dope. They said, yeah, we noticed you started your application, but you didn't complete it. We're doing portfolio reviews this Saturday. Can you come? I called off of work. Okay. I went, um, and they were only doing 12-minute portfolio reviews. So I went all the way downtown and there was maybe like, let's just say there was 12 of us, 12 minutes each. I went last. And the whole time I'm thinking, dang, because they still had their suitcases like they were fresh off the plane. I was like, dang, they're not going to give me, like, maybe they'll cut it short, or 12 minutes is such a short time. And I waited patiently. I didn't get all frumpy. I was just thinking, like, damn, they just got off the plane. I see them with their suitcases and we only have 12 minutes each. And I went last. So I was prepared for my 12 minutes, but I shared my images. I talked about my work and they were so animated. They were like, no, they're going to love you. Please apply. This is great. Do you know my portfolio review was 45 minutes to an hour? I'm pretty confident we sat in there for an hour. And that split moment of like, damn, like I'm last, they're gonna kind of cut me short. No, we yap, 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 yap. And I love that. She gave me pointers, she told me what to do next. And the next day I went and used the campus computers to go online. I was like, what did I even do on here? Originally, I was going to apply to the oh, a mosquito bit me, y'all. Originally, I was going to apply to the painting program because my undergrad was in painting. So the obvious next step was just to expound or expand upon that and have a studio. But I researched the contemporary art practice program, and the CAP program I felt like spoke more to me. The contemporary art practice program is essentially a program for conceptual artists. So the mediums are open. They're very open, from writing to sculpture to painting to audio to visual to, I mean, science projects. I was in class. My cohort also was filled with scientists. just real like true thinkers and tinkers. And I said, fuck it, I'm gonna apply to this program. I applied to that program. Now, the difference between the Yale application process and the process at the Royal College of Art is at Yale is just straight to the point. You're going to get in if your work is just boom, boom, boom. That's my personal opinion because some of my contemporaries and peers who have gotten into Yale, it makes a lot of sense because their work is just boom, boom. It's succinct, it's clear, you understand it on the first go. And you don't really have to talk about it. It visually, like it just reels you in. Now, my work, I do feel like it visually reels you in, but at the time that I applied to Yale, I don't think my work was as strong as I wanted to be in a way where the story was articulated quite clearly, or the research rather. However, the Royal College of Arts application program allowed for me to create a portfolio that was like a timeline of how I arrived to the final painting or sculpture or writing. And I like that. So I could sit down and really expound upon these ideas. I was able to include sketches. I was able to include quotes. I was able to include a bibliography of text that I was using for research. I was able to include my undergraduate thesis. I loved that I could do this. And so it was free to apply. I sent it off and went about my way and got in, y'all. I got in, and once I got in, I was like, fuck, okay, what do I do now? Because, this is not like a school around the corner. This is an entirely different country, okay? We're talking about the UK. I paid my deposit, and everything after that, I just did it. My visa, I already had my passport, the paperwork, looking for roommates, X, Y, and Z. But I say all this to say again, plant those seeds. Just plant the seeds. You already have an inkling right here in the back of your mind, and it tells you exactly what to do. It tells you what to do. You know what to do. Sometimes you may be a little slow about it, but as long as you get it done. And this is what I did for myself. I didn't know when I was younger that this is what I would be doing. I didn't know, not at least intentionally, even though I never stopped reading, I never stopped writing, I never stopped seeking out people to critically engage with. I never stopped doing research on my own private time. I never stopped having a desire to evolve. I never stopped painting. I never stopped drawing. I never stopped being around the arts. And not only as a connoisseur, purveyor, but as somebody who was like trying to break it down so I could recreate things and put my own remix on it. I just never stopped. So the idea that I never stopped and I continued to plant all those seeds and it landed me, at top universities, it's not really mind blowing when I think about it. It's more or less me affirming myself. Everything that I've done has been to affirm myself, right? Like plant the seeds. And now I am living in Spain. I'll talk about that story on a different day, but plant those seeds.